Paul's just done the trade, yeah? Let's do it. They've just done it. It's amazing. They're the questions. Great. Let's do the intros and get on with the podcast.
Hello, my name is Paul Harvey, and this is Sustainable Old Men. I'm a podcast host, and I do a little bit of things around sustainability and my friends around me. I want to introduce you to my friends, and it's Howard Gunstock and Gavin Lendon. Tell us about yourself, guys. Pick who goes first.
Hi, I'm Howard Gunstock. Hi, I'm Howard Gunstock. I'm the CEO of a company called Carbon Capture. We grow seaweed to fight climate change.
Oh, that was quick.
I thought I'd try something different.
I'm Gavin Lendon. I am the founder of a company called Sustainology. We help companies with their sustainability strategy. I'm also a Villa fan, but we'll mention that.
Back to football. They must get football in somehow. And look, guys, I'm interested in this conversation about ESG. I mean, we mentioned the word ESG a lot, and I do wonder, does a company have to have an ESG policy or whatever ESG is to be a sustainable or green company? I mean, Howard, you operate a company called Carbon Capture. Do you have an ESG policy?
Do you have any ESG? Yes, we do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. So
did Gavin sign it off?
Gavin did not sign it off.
I have signed my non-disclosure agreement with Howard, though. I must.
He has actually. So there's a few things there's three things that go into ESG, right? So ESG is actually the prism that your company reflects onto the world, not the marketing, not the product itself. It's how the company reflects onto the world, and it's their stance on the environment, their social standings, and their governance as well. Effectively, we can talk a lot about the E and what the approach is, but when we talk about governance and certain the social aspects of it, that's really interesting. So, if your company has a policy where it encourages you to have family time and work from home, it's going to have a higher skew of females to men. If your company has a larger amount doesn't really care about the difference between its the executive pay and hello.
It's Paul. He's ruffling paper.
No, I know.
Sorry.
If your company has a stance where your executives are being paid, 100-fold more than your operations, it's more likely to be an autocratic organization or something in manufacturing with a high FTSE stance, because it's all about manufacturing and operations. Hello.
What?
Yeah, sorry. We're dazzled by you.
So your ESG policy and stance often reflects the way that other people who want to come into your business, or potential people want to come into your business, come see your business, and the people that are in your business, how long they will determine and stay. Because if all your policies are skewed, you're not going to get a good balance of people wanting to work for your business. If your business just pollutes, if there's a gender pay gap, if there's there's poor governance in its process and people hurt themselves, who wants to work for an organization like that?
So where did ESG come from, and is it a universal worldwide agreement?
It has come out. It has come out of sort of some stuff that's been produced by the UN, and also from Davos and the World Economic Forum. Is it universally recognized? Yes. I would also put forward the view that it is a logical development of CSR, if you can remember that, corporate social responsibility.
Right.
It's a logical flow through from that. I do have issues with ESG, which I have said before in this forum. And I'm going to rely on Howard a little bit here. To me, ESG has lost its original meaning, which Howard can emphasize in a minute. I think it's become more of a procedural type process, in the sense of people are taking ESG targets because that's what an ESG rating company tells them to take. Whereas originally, I personally believe the targets that were made were set by the companies themselves to achieve what they wanted to achieve. So, Howard, do you want to expand on that?
So I come from an HR background, and before HR, it was personnel. And what struck me about personnel was the system and the process to execute executive decisions. Quite a lot of the time before HR became a function, personnel, especially because it had an element of payroll involved in it, sat under finance, and finance was all about reporting numbers. So actually, what transpired as a function came out of risk and reward and analysis from finance. And what's interesting about ESG is it's having a similar sort of moment in transition now. To Gavin's point, you're talking about reporting numbers, you're talking about making sure that you're justifying, and that information is about mitigating risk to the people who approve budget, which comes from the finance department. What differentiates ESG is how well you execute it within the organization. It's the people that bring it to life, how well you develop engagement, and how well you take it to the people and then your employers, and making something that's meaningful and relevant to them is really what it's about.
Yeah. I think if ESG is deployed properly, it will grow the business. If it is purely a tick box exercise, the growth will be incremental. Whereas if it is done properly, it can be stratospheric.
Surely, as a tick box exercise,
not just me.
No, it isn't, is it? As a ticking of a box, all you're doing is just protecting yourself from criticism, ridicule, or litigation. That's all tick boxes are for, isn't it? It's just to prove that you did what you said you did. Yeah, there's no meaning or value behind it.
It's a minimum viable baseline, isn't it?
Yeah.
The way I've been taught to handle ESG is to carry out something called a materiality assessment and an impact assessment, where you take on board what is important to your stakeholders, and your stakeholders are not just your shareholders. It can include the local community, employees, the management. The shareholders are a stakeholder, local government. It's much, much wider. And as a consequence of that, take a Rio Tinto zinc. Get them right. They're mining away quite happily. All they're interested in is profits at the end of the day, shareholder driven. But where they're mining as a local community, what they're doing to the natural environment has an impact both on the local community in terms of aesthetics, and potentially they might be putting slag or waste product into the water supply. So you start then saying, right, hang on a moment, chaps, what's most important for us as these stakeholders? We do need to do something about this. And suddenly the business becomes more and more responsible for the impacts it has created. That to me is the strength of ESG when done properly.
I think if you take that Rio Tinto example as well, where they sat with the sorts of people that would probably apply for jobs at Rio Tinto, just think about it. They're not going to be good on the environment. The social side of things, well, you'll expect when you work for the devil for some of those social side of things to be okay, and the governance side of things will be in various states of way, but their processes and procedures will be
Yeah.
second to none. Their health record will be second to none, because they'll play to the strengths that's there. And all of a sudden, you've got a profile of the sorts of organisation and understanding that you're going to be working for.
But like Rio Tinto being an example, I mean, they're a mining company. I mean, and let's be realistic here. Everything that's non-inanimate in this hasn't grown in this office we're all sitting in, has been mined or processed in some way. So we do need these organisations. I'm assuming that ESG is being forced or pushed into these organisations, or do they have a choice on it?
So they'll have. Oh, go on, Gav.
No. I'll defer to you. Get away.
I think there's some of it which is down to legality. There'll be it's in the same way that you'll have sort of different types of carbon credits that are obligated to buy. There'll be obligations of safety and of standards. So ESG will be in that type of organisation quite a low level responsibility type role. If anyone works for Rio Tinto and wants to have a little chat with us about it, I'm happy to have a chat with you.
I mean, perhaps we should take Rio Tinto and say a mining company, not necessarily Rio Tinto, because we don't actually know. We just picked a name out of the hat, haven't we? Really.
Well,
Interesting enough. When I was sitting my GRI course, within my cohort was a lovely Irish lady who was working for a mining company that was going to be mining in Ecuador. And they had taken their ESG responsibilities to another level. They were 5 years out before putting anything into the ground. And by that stage, they'd built a school for the local community, educated the local community, were creating jobs for the local community, explaining how they were going to take the ore out of the mountain and how they were going to handle it, and how it was going to be transported. So it was completely transparent, and they'd supported the local community because they knew the local community had to support the mine, because if they didn't, the government would have come down on them.
That's really refreshing to hear that. That's really refreshing to hear that there is people actually like that, because my sense of it is, all right, if you've got a nasty process to happen and you're a large company, can you set up a shell company and outsource it to shield yourself from it? And does ESG carry through to the company, or does it stop at the door between one company and another if you own that company?
I think we're veering off topic.
No, I'm just curious. I'm just saying is that can ESG be manipulated like that?
You're now getting into the realm of legality.
Fraud.
Okay, all right. So it can't be. It can't be manipulated like that. That's what you're saying.
Well, I suspect you can possibly avoid it. It's the same as sort of on topic, but slightly not. B Corp certification. Unilever is not a B Corp company, but its subsidiary Ben & Jerry's is.
Okay. But Ben & Jerry's, within their own context, can operate from a B Corp perspective.
Yes.
Okay, so that does work. That I can see how that would work. So why is ESG getting so much kickback? I mean, you see it a lot in the US press about ESG being a kind of a socialist charter for destroying business or something, whatever how they put it.
Yes, there is.
That also should be the advert.
There is a great video of a lady from, I think the organization is called Turning Point. It's a very young Republican kind of organization, and she's talking about ESG as literally, as you're suggesting, Paul. It's a woke movement, and it is the same as Chinese power over their citizens. ESG has become very political, and it is the red states that don't like it, and in particular, it's the red states that have extractive industries.
Okay. So there's logic. There's logic in that.
If you talk about ESG in California, you'd have no issue. If you talk about it in Texas, you'd be roasted.
Okay, fair enough.
Very interesting point. So again, does that reflect onto people? That reflect onto companies in the UK as well?
In terms of, is it political? Give it, if Rishi stayed in power for 5 more years, this is a very hypothetical kind of scenario. Given the slight pushback he's had on net zero, you could potentially see it going the same way. He's already given permission for the new oil field, which on the grounds that we'll need the oil, but it's being developed by the Norwegians and we're not getting the oil.
81% of our oil is export.
Yeah.
But apart from that.
Yeah, apart from that, and apart from the fact that we need more gas because so we don't have to rely on the Russians that supply all of 2% of our current gas.
Okay, we're definitely veering off conversation now. But the point about this ESG, I mean, obviously you work. I'm assuming, Gavin, you work in ESG all the time.
I'm assuming you work. I'm assuming.
Yes.
Oh, don't be nasty. I'm assuming you work in that industry all the time. I mean, is it an expanding industry? Are you finding the conversation easy?
That's a lovely question. It is expanding, but it's expanding because of the ESG raters.
Right.
The tick box exercise. More and more people want to have an ESG strategy. They want to have an ESG strategy that is recognized. Therefore, they'll go to a rating scheme like EcoVadis. And so in that sense, it's now becoming a compliance kind of strategy. Whereas I liked the original ideas behind ESG, which Howard explained earlier. It's about purpose. It's about mission. So there are people that still want to have a purposeful ESG strategy. But when you've got a legislation coming into the EU called the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, that encourages ESG type strategies in the purer form. So you have to report on water, you have to report on waste, you have to report on pollution, you have to report on carbon. So that's good. You also have to report on social metrics as well. Coming back to Howard's point about everyone knows about the E, but the S is less well known, and the G is certainly not well known. But coming back to what Howard's talking about in terms of huge differences of pay between base level and executive pay, not great from an ESG perspective.
No.
Then gender splits in boardrooms, that's another one. Gender pay gap.
So if you know any of our listeners were walking down the high street, are there obvious companies that they're looking and they're seeing? Is ESG in every single company, or is it something that everyone's doing, or is it? I mean, is it openly talked about, or is it something a little bit?
So if you
at the bottom of the website, not really looked at very often.
If you walked down a high street, any retail high street, you are more likely to see a B Corp sign than someone say, "Oh my God, we've got a great ESG strategy." Yep. The ESG strategy is silent. It's more on the reporting side.
So there's no ESG logo then.
No ESG logo. No.
So I missed the trick here, somewhere, haven't they?
Howard's working on it. It's fine.
Literally as we were speaking. No, that's really interesting. So the E has become more prevalent. The S and the G is more. I think. Sorry, depending on the industry type, the S is definitely something that's started to be built in. So that gender pay gap, doing voluntary work, etc., etc. And the governance is really about how you run a business. And that can vary in massive swathes, but that's to do with management process and procedure. There is much more focus on the E, which is much easier to be able to report on, because if it has metrics, it can be reported on. I think overall what you're finding is that in the same way that as we grow up, we have different ways of behaving. That's the same to be said for companies, and it's starting to come to a fore that we should be behaving in a much more effective, moral way.
And to build on that point, there is a lot of statistical data that demonstrate that ESG companies perform better than non-ESG companies. Because if you think about what lies behind ESG, I talked about materiality assessments and impact assessments. In essence, that's a look forward about what are the potential risks in the future and what is your strategy to handle these risks. You can see that in the legislation that's coming into the UK as well. When you start looking forward, particularly on the climate side, what are the climate risks coming down the track? And what is your strategy? The more you encourage strategy, the more your company becomes better run. One of the important aspects of the sorry, it's my son. Just try and kill him. One of the more important things of ESG, he says completely lost his train of thought, is the fact that when you look at the future, what my course convener told me on my GRI course is you're looking for the icebergs ahead of you. And bear in mind that icebergs are only 10% above water. It's how you manage those. And more importantly, coming back to Howard's point on the G, are these decisions about strategy taken at board level? Is there some direct responsibility coming back to the social aspects at board level? Because what you've seen in the past in the last 10 years, it's improving now, is, oh my God, we need a sustainability officer. Let's get Jenny from accounts. Jenny from accounts, you're now our sustainability officer. Oh, good. We can carry on with life. Business as usual, everyone. We've got a sustainability officer. Fantastic. The sustainability officer now has to have some power and some responsibility, and above all, some influence.
Yep.
I silenced you. Sorry about that.
No, it's fascinating. It's fascinating, and I think to sum it up, it does prove the point. You know, if someone has taken the time to create and structure an ESG policy, you know, they may not be there in the beginning, but it will, like a lot of these things that I remember. We talked about, you know, in another podcast, we talked about quality management, that sort of stuff. Like, these things always take the business forward. As soon as you start measuring something, as soon as you start making decisions based on a projection of some sorts, the business gets better. And you're not surprised by things coming at you.
If it's not measured, it's not important.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
And on that wonderful note,
time to wrap up.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Lovely conversation.
Love you.
See you next time.